All right, Shalom. You reached the He Prayed channel. My name is Isaac Mawath. But first and foremost, I want to say, call Halayim Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai Bahashem Harakach. Double honors to the apostles and elders, 7:13:19, where I learned this truth from, and who rule well. Salutations to the Bakiar, the elect, the 144,000. That's 12,000 men from each of the 12 tribes of Israel. The 12 tribes of Israel consist of you so-called blacks, Latinos, and indigenous of America. The 144,000 being the governing body within the one-third. The rest of the one-third comprises of elect men, women, and children. Shalom to those Israelites scattered due to the diaspora and also the triangular trade. So our people come looking like different ethnicities, having various complexions. So this is not a black thing. We're not the black Hebrew Israelites. We're just Hebrew Israelites. Shalom to those that died in this truth. It says the dead should be raised up first. Those that will be accompanying Yahweh Shah's return, including our King, King Mashah, who is King David. And as always, it's an honor and privilege, honor and blessing to continue to do this work. The water Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shah for answering my prayers and permitting me to do such. Baba Kashal Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shah Ba'ashem Harakach Wadash allowed us to be an edifying lesson to at least one member or the elect. So the title of this video, America, the daughter of Babylon, shall be humbled. Right? Because we're in a time of that great straightening. So going to Proverbs chapter 16, verse 18, it says, pride goeth before destruction. So people tend to be proud as hell before, they get that good humiliation. That humiliation could come in, destruction. Then being put to death. Look at the pride, for instance, or should I say, example of Alizé, man. Chief priest, so-called guerrilla Hebrew, and how he walked in immense pride and was humbled. Even made a laughing stock in the midst of these worldly niggas. No different than anyone that is walking in pride, man. There's going to be an inevitable humbling. And that includes you, Esau. It says, in a haughty spirit before a fall. Very proud, arrogant spirit, man. Before a fall. But guess what? Now we're in the time of the fall of the American empire, man. The daughter of Babylon. Going to Copilot, it says pride, Hebrew, Gaon, or Gaon, exaltation, arrogance, swelling. It's the inflated self, thinking that your shit don't stink, right? Haughty spirit, Hebrew, Gaba Ru'ah, or Ruach, or Rakah. It says a lifted up inner posture, high-mindedness. Fall, Hebrew, Kashal, to stumble, collapse, be overthrown. This isn't just about individuals, it's about spiritual law for kingdoms. When a power swells beyond measure, economically, militarily, culturally, its spirit lifts itself against the Most High. That invisible arrogance draws a visible judgment. The fall is not random, it's the spiritual consequences of pride maturing. And their pride have or has been maturing, you know, because they figured, on the on the lines of Ecclesiastes 8 and 11, I remember this is the way Esau thinks, man. This is Ecclesiastes chapter 8, verse 11. It says, because sentence against a evil work, and Esau, so-called white man, started calling himself white in 1681 due to the Bacon rebellions. He has been performing a evil work because he is embedded with that perpetual hatred because of his spiritually relinquished birthright. The birthright was taken from him in the spirit, man. That's why it says, if God be for us, who could be against us? Yahweh specifically was against Esau, you know? So he set it up that Esau was going to despise his birthright, but now he wants it back. Now that he sees that, his rule is coming to an end, he's trying to do everything he can to upset prophecy. And little does he know, he's walking right into it, man. It says it's not executed speedily. Therefore, the mind of the sons of men is fully set in them to do evil, you know? And that's exactly how the sons of men, which is these heathen nations, are fully set in themselves to do evil. And that also includes 2/3 of our people as well. And we already know that Esau, he's the son of the wicked, so how much more so him? He's not going to take heed to his actions. It says, though a sinner, now, only way you could sin is if you go back to the line of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, which is you so-called blacks, Latinos, and indigenous. And also, the Israelites that are scattered among the nations that might look like the other nations, right? So they're the only ones that can sin. The law of the Bible applies only to them. It says, though a sinner do evil 100 times and his days be prolonged. Right, man, because there was a saying that individuals in the hood don't live past 25. Well, now they becoming unks and OGs, and despite them doing all types of wickedness. Look at Big U and his rap sheet and his organization, which is the Rolling 60s. which I met members of the Rolling 60s, man. And they're just lost souls, man, that have been rejected. And eventually, they're going to be destroyed unless Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua has mercy on them, which, I believe the doors of mercy are almost closed. It says, "In his days be prolonged, yet surely I know that it shall be well with them that fear Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua, which fear before him. But it shall not be well with the wicked." So it's not going to end well with the wicked, man. And the wicked is you so-called white people, man. You Edomites. And those that fear Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua on this side are the elect. And it's gonna be well with them because they're gonna be protected in these days. It says, "Neither shall he prolong his days," because this damn devil thinks he's gonna prolong his days, man. He thinks that he's gonna rule forever, not knowing according to prophecy, we're in the times in which he's about to be removed out of power. You know, it says, "Which are as a shadow, because he feareth not before Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua." So his days are going to be as a shadow. And that's why it says, he beheld Satan falling from heaven as lightning. This is going to be a quick overthrow of this damn devil. And he don't even see it coming, man. And that's a good thing. Proverbs chapter 29, verse 23, right? It says, "A man's pride shall bring him low." So this is the reason why these damn devils are being brought low, because of their pride, man. And, Donald Trump is, one of the best representatives of that pride. It says, "But honor shall uphold the humble in spirit." You know, um, Daniel chapter 4, verse 37. It says, now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol and honor the King of heaven, all whose works are truth. So everything in these scriptures is truth, man, because it's the works of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua, and his ways judgment. And those that walk in pride, he is able to abase. And, we saw that on a micro level, dealing with, the Sakari and Alizé and other individuals. And we're going to see it on a macro level with the daughter of Babylon, aka America. Going to the Apocrypha, the book of Ecclesiasticus, or Sirach, chapter 10, verse 7. It says, "Pride is hateful before the Most High and man." Right? I personally don't like proud niggas. And, I could tell when a nigga proud right away, man. And I try to my best to just, walk in the spirit and be weary of that person, because, they're willing to do anything and say anything, you know, especially in, negativity, if you accidentally stroke their ego. You know, a lot of these proud niggas will kill you because they get their ego stroked. It says, and by both doth one commit iniquity, right? Which is sins abounded. It says, because of unrighteous dealings, injuries, and riches got by deceit. Now, this is the spirit of the so-called white man. It says the kingdom is translated from one people to another. So because of his unrighteous dealings, number one, with you Israelites, you so-called blacks, Latinos, and indigenous, the injuries and riches got by deceit, right? Um, him lying his way into another country's resources and setting up these false operations, which he's behind it, just to demonize a certain group to justify them, taking action. Same thing that they're doing with Iran. It's the same tired ass game plan. So injuries, this means harm done to people, oppression, abuse, violence, or policies that wound the nation. Verse 6 warns against injurious practices, showing that this theme is already active in the chapter. You know, jumping down to verse 18. So I don't want to make this video long, more than it probably will be. Verse 18, it says, pride was not made for men, nor furious anger for them that are born of a woman. Right? So in that pride, you also exhibit furious anger, man. Because like I said, that ego gets hit up. So going back to Copilot, says the Most High has a law in the spirit. When pride matures, destruction follows. That applies to men and to kingdoms. Any empire that exalts itself militarily, economically, culturally, sets itself up for a kashah, a fall. And that's going to be America real soon. Let's see. So let's go to the book of Obadiah. I'm going to read verse 3 and 4. It says, the pride of thy heart have deceived thee. So that pride that the Most High put in your spirit, Esau, has deceived you. And you're deceived by your own prowess in your technology, which really that's the Heavenly Father's technology that he's given you to bring about his judgments and his test. It says, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, because you came from Petra, you had a stint as a mountain goat in Petra, and then later on in history, which is not too far in time, you were living in the Caucasus Mountains to the point where the spirit has even allowed you to be called Caucasian, which is a spiritual breadcrumb, because when you define Caucasian, it means cave dweller. And these people love to be rock climbing. They're the number one nation of people that love rock climbing, man. and dangling off a mile-high mountain. It says whose habitation is high. They build these buildings that stretch to the clouds, skyscrapers, you know, and also the height of their power. They're at the top of the summit. It says that saith in his mind, who shall bring me down to the ground? And with that exaltation, they garnered arrogancy, that pride. Verse 4 says, though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, they even chose the proudest bird, man. Another spiritual breadcrumb that the Most High threw at you people, but a lot of you can't see it. It says, and though thou set thy nest, that nest is the defense. Even when you deal with chicklings or, hatchlings, whatever they call baby birds, right? That defense is their nest that keeps them away from predators. If it's high in the canopy, then, it's built in such a way that they don't fall. It's their protection. It's their defense. And Esau, he set up his defense in outer space. And also reports is that's the reason why they want Greenland. Something to do with Space Force and them combating Yahweh Shai, who the world only calls Jesus Christ on his return with thousands of angels. It says, and though thou set thy nest among the stars, thence will I bring thee down, saith Yahweh. And that clock, started to initiate, I'll say, was in 1969 with those Apollo missions. Nothing happens for no reason. Let's see. So section 2, it says, daughter of Babylon shall be humbled. This is Isaiah chapter 47, verse 1. Come down and sit in the dust, which dust represents confusion. Come down, meaning to be humbled in power, right? O virgin, the reason why America is deemed a virgin in the scriptures is because it's never been touched by war. Daughter of Babylon, the mother likened onto ancient Babylon. Going from Ezekiel 16 and 44, so as the mother, so as the, or as the mother, so as the daughter. So they carry that same spirit, and it's a spirit of confusion. It says, sit on the ground, there is no throne. So there ain't going to be no power for America real soon. Isaiah 47 and 5, sit thou silent and get thee into darkness, O daughter of the Chaldeans. Because really America is a corporation of the rich elite bankers, man, which are the equivalency of the ancient Chaldeans, which the Chaldeans were known for being witches, warlocks, sorcerers. Same thing that you see at the top, the creme of la creme. How they, rumors they got child sacrifices. They like adrenochrome. They follow Aleister Crowley and his sex magic. It says, for thou shalt no more be called the Lady of Kingdoms, which to be called the Lady of Kingdoms is, being the number one superpower. And that also falls in line with them having the Statue of Liberty. Jumping down, this is Isaiah 47:10. It says, "For thou hast trusted in thy wickedness, thou hast said, none seeth me." Right? Because now Esau is scrambling because he's now being exposed. And he's been being exposed by certain whistleblowers, some of his own people that, broke away, being more than likely disgruntled, and trying to spill the tea. It says, "Thy wisdom and thy knowledge, and I perverted thee." And it says in the scriptures that he is wiser than Daniel, man. Which really is on a diabolical level. His wisdom comes from the left-hand side, so it's all that has to deal with unrighteousness. Like I always said, the only thing that comes out of these laboratories is evil in the movies, which is no different than in real life. It says, "Thy wisdom and thy knowledge that have perverted thee, and thou hast said." "And thou hast said in thy heart, I am and none else beside me." Right? So he doesn't consider any other nation equals, man. He'll never have a nation on his same level. That's why he invests so much in his military and his technology. This is Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 31. It says, "But I am against thee, O thou most proud, saith Yahweh of armies. For thy day is come, the time that I will visit thee." So the Heavenly Father and His Son is about to visit you damn devils, man. And he's using Trump to push it along, further along, to hasten it. That's why basically Trump is fulfilling all the major prophecies, man. Precepts of Babylon's humbling. Jeremiah chapter 50 and 51, paraphrase. Babylon is called the golden cup, which there was a video, I forget which brother made it. I believe it was Elder Apostle Rhymelot that went into the cup of the Statue of Liberty, man. That before it was a torch, I believe it was going to be a cup that was painted scarlet and purple, But this golden cup represents, uh, I'm trying to think of something. I'm trying to think of a term that they call it, what they call that, China ware. Well, I guess you could say China ware. That China ware is almost like that very exquisite dinner sets, that you don't really bring out. You would have them in a cabinet as, more so decoration, or you'll have a golden cup as, your number one cup for splendor. Well, that's America among the nations. It's called the golden cup, or it's called the number one superpower, and it's marveled at by its splendor. It says, "Her pride is judged, her walls fall, her land becomes desolate," because eventually America is going to get destroyed by thermonuclear warheads that look like hell, which I did a video years back going into how the hell was actually warheads and how the warheads match up with what a talent weighs, which is about around 200 pounds. Give or take, there's warheads that are more as far as weight goes, but there are warheads that actually uh, weigh about 200 pounds, man. The weight of a talent. right? It says nations from the north come against her. And these stupid Edomites in America, which the Most High is putting the spirit on them to air, he has them going east and not west. He has them setting up shop in Greenland, which the Russians are going to come from the west. They're going to come through Alaska. You know, they're not going the direction of uh, where NATO is, man, which matches up that, since they don't have their forces, situated in the direction in which, these nations from the north are going to come to America, is going to align perfectly with the scriptures that one post shall run to another and declare that, half the city has been taken, which America as a whole is referenced as a city. And that's why, you're a citizen, no matter what state you live in or territory. Revelation chapter 18, verse 7 through 8. How much she have glorified herself and lived deliciously. For she saith in her heart, in her mind, now this is the spirit of this place, I sit a queen and am no widow, because it hasn't been touched by war. It says, and shall see no sorrow. And they believe that they'll never be handed its ass. It says, therefore shall her plagues come in one day, and they're about to come, man. Keywords, Babylon, Hebrew, Babel, from Bala, to confuse, mix, confusion, mixed worship. And you got nothing but mixed worship from the false prophet, which is the Vatican here in America, whether you believe in so-called Christianity or so-called Islam, so-called Buddhism, Scientology, the list goes on and on. It's all a bunch of confusion, man. It says global system, daughter of Babylon, the offspring continuation of that same spirit in a later empire. That's all it is, man. A latter day power that sits as a queen, rules the seas and trade. When you see how America is seizing these foreign nations' uh, oil tankers, man, fucking up their economies. It says lives deliciously, and America is the number one wasteful country in the world, man. Even their crying ass homeless, or those on social services, compared to the rest of the world, they live in luxury. They're all fat, 400-500 pounds, well fed, milking the system. That's also uh, symbolic of this place living deliciously, man. Even their homeless are out of shape, from being gluttonous. It says, I am and none else, sheds innocent blood, and goes around sheds innocent blood on false pretenses. And they got a track record of doing such. So it's not just uh, something out of the blue. It's a pattern already, man. It's to the point that, this is just who they are. The damn devil the Bible speaks of. It says, fits the daughter of Babylon pattern. Many see America in that pattern. Thus, America, the daughter of Babylon, shall be humbled. You know, and where is it going to start? It's going to start with this war with Iran. This is going to be what initiates this damn devil's fall, because if they close that strait or Hormuz, then that's 40% of the world's oil. You know, these this economy is gonna crash, man. It's gonna fall flat on its ass. You know, just to get kicked in the face. This is Second Ezra chapter 15, verse 28. It says, "Behold, a horrible vision, and the appearance thereof from the east, which is the eastern hemisphere, where the nations of the dragons of Arabia shall come out with many chariots." Now, this is not talking about all these proxy armies, because they ain't got no damn chariots, man. They ain't got no military hardware. They just fight more so a guerrilla type warfare. They wage more so a guerrilla warfare. And yeah, they have missiles and bombs, but they're not coming out with airplanes and jets and tanks and transport vehicles and so on and so forth. No, this is talking about Saudi Arabia's, the Pakistanis, all those different nations within that region, because they're gonna turn on America, man. And they already know this. That's why they put it in their planning. They put it in their uh, what do they call it, hidden in plain sight. It says, "And the multitude of them shall be carried as the wind upon earth, that all they which hear them may fear and tremble." You know, because the Most High is going to put the spirit on these nations to come up against this damn devil, man. Mind you, he's going to go in the way of the Midianites, which they ended up, destroying each other. Verse 30, it says, and then, in the tail end of the war, Yahweh Shah is going to come and get his lick back. Verse 30, it says, "Also the Carmanians, raging in wrath, shall go forth as the wild boars of the wood, and with great power." So the Most High is going to have Iran have great power, right? And you see it through their missile cities, their drone technology, and they got weapons that America don't even know about, man. Rumor has it they even have nuclear weapons. It says, and with great power shall they come and join battle with them. So they're going to join battle with those nations in Arabia, man. "And shall waste a portion of the land of the Assyrians." And that land is, occupied by those military bases of America, man. So let me see if I can. So it says the Carmanians in the war motive. Who are the Carmanians? Carmania was an ancient region roughly corresponding to modern Kerman province in southern eastern Iran, part of successive Iranian empires: Median, Achaemenid, Seleucid, Parthian, Sasanian. Y'all sorry about this, I pronounced it right. It says the name appears in older sources as Carmena, Old Persian. Later, Kerman, preserved in today's Kerman, which there's a city outside of where I used to live called Kerman. So, all right, take that that's where they got it from. This is Apocrypha, Second Ezra chapter 15, paraphrase. It says the chapter speaks of worldwide plagues, sword, famine, and upheavals. In verses 30 through 32, Apocrypha, the Carmanians are described as a fierce people going forth like wild boars in war, clashing with other nations. So historical accounts of the Carmanians as a warlike people. The Carmanians, Old Persia, Carmania, or Carmana, later Kerman, lived in what is now southeastern Iran. Multiple ancient historians describe them as hard, fierce, and war-trained. Below are the strongest historical witnesses. Strabo, I'm just going to skim through it. Strabo gives the most detailed ancient description of the Carmanians. He writes that the Carmanians lived a hard, rugged lifestyle, were similar to the Persians in warlike customs, trained constantly in hunting, endurance, and combat, were known for severity and toughness. Strabo even says their customs were so harsh that they resembled the ancient Spartans in discipline and austerity. But the ancient Spartans were Lacedaemonians, which were Israelites that were Hellenized. It says discipline and austerity. Summary of Strabo's portrayal: the Carmanians were a stern, martial people, hardened by desert life, trained for war, and feared by their neighbors. 2. Arian Anabasis of Alexander. Arian mentions Carmanians in the context of military campaigns. He described them as skilled fighters, dangerous desert warriors, capable of resisting larger imperial forces. So the Most High is going to put the spirit back on these people, man. And he's going to have them capable of resisting larger imperial forces. And that includes you Edomites here in America, man. It says Alexander the Great's forces encounter Carmanian resistance, and Arian notes their tenacity and fighting spirit. 3. Herodotus, histories. Herodotus, I believe I'm saying that right, does not focus heavily on Carmania, but he does note that Carmania was part of the Achaemenid military system, supplied troops to Persian imperial armies, was known for harsh terrain that produced tough soldiers. Herodotus' pattern is clear. Regions with severe climate produced fierce warriors, and Carmania fits that mold. Pliny the Elder, Natural History. Pliny describes Carmania as a land of hardy people, known for raiding and tribal warfare, feared by neighboring provinces. He also notes that Carmanians were used by Persian kings as frontier fighters, which implies a reputation for combat skill. Diodorus Siculus, Library of History. Diodorus mentions Carmanians in the context of military service under Persian kings, regional conflicts, their reputation for ferocity. He also notes that Carmania was a place where rulers sent criminals and exiles, who then became hardened fighters, adding to the region's warlike character. Let me see. It says, now the Apocrypha makes even more sense. Second Ezra chapter 15, verse 30. Also the Carmanians raging in wrath shall go forth as the wild boars of the wood. The imagery is perfect because they were known for desert ferocity. They were frontier warriors, Slovakia. They were unbroken by empire. They were harsh, disciplined, and violent. They were feared by both Greeks and Persians. The prophets used them as a symbol of chaotic, unstoppable Eastern violence in the last days. Geographical context. Carmania equals roughly modern Kerman province in southeastern Iran. This region borders deserts and mountains, historically produced rugged fighters, was strategically important for Persian military logistics. This is why Carmanians appear in both Greek histories and Jewish apocalyptic prophecy. This is the same thing, pretty much I just read. I'm going to ask it a question. I was just trying to see something real quick. Go on to history a little bit. We scratch the surface to see if there's some sort of relevance of truth. So we see that throughout history, these Carmanians are very adept to war. So going to Copilot says the Carmanians represent a regional eastern power stirred up in the last days, part of Yahweh's sword against proud kingdoms. They are one piece in the larger war puzzle around the lands of Persia, Iran. When Persia became Iran, historically, Persia is a Greek Western name from Pasa, the people of Cyrus. The people themselves used forms of Iran for centuries. In 1935, Reza Shah requested foreign governments to use Iran officially instead of Persia. Etymology: Iran, from an older Indo-Iranian root meaning land of the Aryans. So what is the Ku Klux Klan and all these white supremacists talking about when they say that they're of Aryan bloodline? Are they talking that they are the Persians? See how stupid these people are, man. Spiritual angle: the name changed, but the land and people are the same. So when prophecy speaks of Persia, you can trace that line into modern Iran, including regions like Armenia and Kerman, or Carmenia, Kerman. So, so going back to Second Ezra chapter 15, verse 30, also the Carmanians raging in wrath shall go forth as the wild boars of the wood. So they're going to be real fierce and dangerous. And with great power shall they come and join battle with them, and shall waste a portion of the land of the Assyrians, which are those American military bases, man. So I'm going to go, the land of Assyria, and a portion shall be waste. Geography: ancient to modern. Ancient Assyria was centered in northern Mesopotamia, core area northern Iraq and southeastern Turkey, with extensions into northwestern Iran and northeastern Syria at its height. Precepts on Assyria's desolation. Now, modern day Assyria is likened onto America, man. Esau. The book of Nahum, chapter 3, verse 7, it says, "And it shall come to pass that all they that look upon thee shall flee from thee." And that's what you're going to start seeing as well, man. You're going to start seeing disassociation. And say, Nineveh is laid waste. And Nineveh you could replace with America. It's going to be laid waste. Who will bemoan her? Whence shall I seek comforters for thee? You know, Zephaniah, righteous Zeph, chapter 2, verse 13. It says, "And he will stretch out his hand against the north and destroy Assyria," right? The north being the northern hemisphere, and destroy Assyria, which Assyria is America, and will make Nineveh, I believe Nineveh was the capital of Assyria, a desolation and dry like a wilderness, which modern day Nineveh will be America, because it's going to be a desolation and dry like a wilderness. It's going to be turned into a desert. Isaiah 14:25, judgment on Assyria. Isaiah chapter 14, verse 24 says, "Yahweh of armies have sworn, saying, Surely as I have thought, so shall it come to pass." So everything that Yahweh Ba'ashim outside has intended is going to come to pass, man. Everything that he said. "And as I have purposed, so shall it stand, that I will break the Assyrian in my land." So he's going to break you so-called Edomite, or you so-called white people. I really mean you Edomites, those that go back to the line of Abraham, Isaac, and Esau. "And upon my mountains tread him underfoot, then shall his yoke depart from off them." So the so-called white man, the Esau, he has a yoke on the people of the Heavenly Father and His Son, man, which is you so-called blacks, Latinos, and indigenous. You know, one thing that he will never do is allow you to go. It says, and his burden depart from off their shoulders, right? Which is his oppression, right? Spiritual GMS style says Assyria is a prototype empire used as a rod of correction, then broken, right? Because Yahweh Shem Shah is using America as his sword later to, permanently sheathe that sword. It says its cities turn into waste places because of thermonuclear destruction. The Most High is going to take that spirit off these nations to be reluctant in shooting their nuclear missiles on this place or even coming up against America, man. It says the same soil, northern Iraq, southeastern Turkey, has been, it's like he has seen empires rise and fall. A portion shall be waste, points to repeated judgments and devastations in that region, which that region, um, that region is home to multiple uh, military bases. Let me see. Why do I feel like I'm missing something? I thought let me see. Let me read this real quick. Where was ancient Assyria? Read that, but I'm reading it again. It says Assyria was a kingdom and later empire in northern Mesopotamia with capitals such as Assur, Nineveh, and Nimrod. Its territory corresponds broadly on northern Iraq and southeastern Turkey, with extensions into parts of modern Iran, Syria, and beyond at its height. Prophetic patterns summarized from various prophets. Assyria is often portrayed as a rod of Yahweh's anger and used to punish, then itself judged and made desolate. Cities like Nineveh are prophesied to become desolation, a dwelling for beasts, a byword of ruin, which that represents America's prophetic end. All right. Spiritual read, portions shall be waste, fits a recurring pattern. A region that once ruled in cruelty becomes a stage for later devastations, war, invasion, depopulation, and that's all going to happen to America. The same lands that were once imperial centers become battlegrounds and ruins again and again. Spiritually, it's Yahweh revisiting the same soil with successive judgments, which that's not the case. You know, this is all what do you call comparing something like another, or uh, dare to say metaphor. You know, likening an ancient kingdom to a modern kingdom, because America didn't exist back then, so they had to describe America the best way they could when they saw the visions, when they were in their trances. It says modern military presence in the region. You asked for possible military bases as potential targets. I need to be clear, I can't frame any real world installations as targets or suggest them in that way. I can, however, speak generally about the presence of forces in the region. The United States maintains a network of bases and deployments across the Middle East under CENTCOM. I think it's a Central Asian something command, or maybe it's not. I forget what sitcom, man. Well, it's not important. It says including Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, Iraq, Syria, and other Gulf states. Examples include naval headquarters in Bahrain or Bahrain and major air facilities such as Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, among others. Spiritual lens from a prophetic perspective, the concentration of foreign forces in and around the old Assyrian, Babylonian, Persian lands looks like the gathering of armies on ancient soil. But the focus spiritually is not on who should be hit, but on how Yahweh Shem Shah uses the clash of empires to humble pride and fulfill his word. Uh, Major U.S. military bases in the region not as targets. Okay, we went through that. We got Kuwait, Iraq, Jordan, where that's Esau's home. Saudi Arabia, UAE, Egypt. Okay, we did all that. Did that. We did that. Six, Section 6. Does the U.S. military have military? It's like it does the U.S. have military bases in northern Iraq and southeastern Turkey? You asked this directly, so let's answer plainly but responsibly. Northern Iraq, the U.S. has had a military presence in northern Iraq. Example given around Erbil and other locations. And you got to also take into account that they have clandestine military bases too, secret military bases, and various forms, bases, facilities, and advisory posts, especially during and after the Iraq War and its operations against ISIS. Southeastern Turkey, the U.S. has used in Sirlik, a air base in southern central Turkey, Adana region, as a major hub, while not exactly southeastern. It is the southern part of Turkey, relatively close to the border Assyrian Babylonian theater. This is section 7. They shall keep silence in their power. Think of keeping silence in their power as rulers refusing to repent or speak truth while they still have strength. This is Amos 6, verse 1 and 3, paraphrase. Woe to them that are at ease in Zion, ye that put far away the evil day and cause the seat of violence to come near. Micah 2 and 1, woe to them that devise iniquity and work evil upon their beds. And this is Esau and his think tanks. When the morning is light, they practice it because it is in the power of their hand. And that's, all those different plays that they've been playing, man. Habakkuk chapter 1, verse 4, therefore the law is slacked and judgment doth never go forth. The wicked doth compass about the righteous, therefore wrong judgment proceeded. And you see that quite evident. Habakkuk chapter 2, 19 through 20. Woe unto him that saith to the wood, awake, but Yahweh is in his holy temple. Let all the earth keep silence before him. Wisdom of Solomon chapter 2, verses 10 through 12. Paraphrase: the ungodly plot against the righteous, using their power to oppress, thinking their strength is the law of justice. Esau's all about justice in his law, right? Second Ezra chapter 15, verse 8 says, I will hold my tongue no more as touching their wickedness. Spiritual interpretation expanded with precepts. Micah 2:1 shows men doing evil because it is in the power of their hand. Spiritually, rulers have power but no fear of the Most High. They act because they can, not because it's right. They use power without accountability. And you've seen that with the Trump administration. They delay the day of reckoning. Amos 6:3. They put far away the evil day. Spiritually, they know judgment is a possibility, but they push it out of mind, staying silent about their own guilt. And that's Esau. Says they corrupt judgment and law. Habakkuk 1:4. Law is slack, judgment never goeth forth. Hold on just a minute. All right. It says Habakkuk chapter 1, verse 4. Law is slack, judgment never goes forth. They corrupt judgment and law. Spiritually, the system is strong, but justice is silent. Courts, media, institutions do not speak against wickedness. And they had a hanging that they don't want to elaborate on in my previous location. It's nowhere in the news. So, they are real perverters. 4, it says they refuse to speak repentance even when warned. Second Ezra chapter 15, verse 8. It says the Lord will no longer hold his tongue. Contrast. Yahweh Shem Yahushua breaks silence, and he's doing that with the prophets. But the rulers keep silence, no confession, no turning. 5, they will be forced into silence before him. Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 20. Let all the earth keep silence before him. The final silence is not arrogant quietness, but forced reverence when judgment hits. So they shall keep silence in their power. Spiritually means when they still have military, economic, and political power, they do not confess, they do not repent, they do not acknowledge the Most High. They suppress truth and corrupt judgment. They act as if their power is the final word. That is the last stage before Proverbs 16 and 18 moment. Pride before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. Can keeping silence in their power also be associated with being humbled in their military arrogance? It could be interpreted that way, yes, especially if you're thinking in terms of ancient literal symbolism rather than strict historical fact. Let me unpack it in a way that connects the idea of silence, power, and military arrogance because ancient writers often use these themes together. Silence as a sign of humbled power. In many ancient traditions, Greek, Near East, and even biblical apocryphal, silence is not just the absence of speech, it's a state that signals loss of confidence, shock after defeat, recognition of limits, submission to a greater force, the collapse of previous arrogance. So when a formerly fierce or warlike people are described as keeping silence, it can absolutely carry the sense of their pride has been broken. This is a common literary device. How this relates to military arrogance. Warlike peoples in ancient texts are often portrayed as loud, boastful, confident in their strength, quick to rage or charge into battle. When such a group is suddenly described as silent, the contrast is intentional. Silent becomes a metaphor for the end of their boasting, the collapse of their martial confidence, a forced humility. This is especially true in apocalyptic and prophetic literature, where silence often follows divine judgment or overwhelming defeat, which is going to be the nuclear missiles and Yahweh and the angels shooting the lasers from the chariots. It says if you're thinking about the Carmenians specifically, which they don't apply to them, yeah, so I think that's going to be it. Unless I could find something else to bring out. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and end it on that. So back to the topic. It's gonna be America, the daughter of Babylon, shall be humbled. And with that, I hope at least one brother of the elect was edified, and I'm gonna say shalom.